are children who described being trained on cats to insert a knife up the rectum of a cat and rip it open as a training to doing the same with live babies. And the woman who got on cable access television and said, the foster children I've had in my home, and she was a very brave lady, and she took the worst foster children, the foster children that no one else would take. And one by one, they began to tell her about being involved in these satanic things. And she said one girl at Christmas time lay on the floor and screamed for 2.5 hours. She said, I can't get the sound of the babies crying out of my head. Christmas is the worst time because that's when we kill the most babies.
The children I have talked to have all had to murder before the age of 2. I mentioned that last week, and we kind of went right on past it. That is something that is beyond anything I could comprehend.
Right.
But in some way, whether with the help of an adult's hand over theirs, or by having them practice, by getting them excited to be part of the adult scene. These children have never seen a normal life, for goodness sakes. They do murder. And the evil thing that happens is they really believe they want to. They want to do what the older people are doing, and they're praised for that. And that becomes their goal, to be like the adults and to do these horrible things. There is a little part in them that I believe we all have, that natural, good, God-given part that knows it's wrong. But in a group and in the excitement of everything, they want to do that. They enjoy the sex. Children are capable of enjoying the sex. That was something I didn't know. Well, you know, why would they fight against it? A child will eat a bag of candy if you give it to them. They will take part in these things willingly. When they get out and begin to talk, that's very difficult for them to realize. We didn't realize it at first, that they actually wanted to do that, and that is part of the very sophisticated brainwashing job that they do on all of these children. The part that made me to believe this child's story was that when he finally said, this baby, he talked about several, but this particular baby had been killed, stabbed again, different way, but stabbed. He curled up in a fetal position. He was 9 years old when he was telling this story. He curled up in a fetal position, and his eyes got real glazed, and he said, they cooked that baby on the grill.
Oh, my gosh.
And I thought, he has really flipped out. I mean, I didn't know. And he said, oh, gross, it smelled like rotten chicken or rotten deer. He then went on and told us how they would cut out the heart, or they would cut off the sex organs. They would save them in the refrigerator, in the freezer. And this is a very typical thing that these kids talk about. They worship the sex organs. I suppose they're so into themselves, and it is life and nature and all of that. I don't, and it's very decadent, deviant. It is nothing a Christian person would care to even hear about. So that is part of the reason, I'm sure, that they do that. But he witnessed that, and they kept it for another ceremony. They will always use these bodies one way or another. I didn't get any answers from that child about what happened to the bodies. Where did they go? Eventually, the little ones that I was talking about first talked about throwing the babies in the fire. And I asked about that. And you mean they were dead and then they threw them in the fire? And the littlest one said, no, them was alive and them threw them, like this. The most horrible story about fire that I have to tell, and this is extremely disturbing, was a little girl. She is a teenager as she was telling me this story. And she was describing the barn where they used to go to have their meetings. And she told how they would gather outside of the barn and do their chanting. And then as they went on into the barn, they would be split into different groups. And she was never with any of her family. They all went to different places. And I asked her where she had to go, and she said, I was always in the burning room. And as she went on and described the burning room, I thought, how she came out of this with any sanity at all, I don't know. She was very small child. They would take young children, and we're probably talking preschoolers. I don't think that they dealt much with the older ones. And they would hang them from a rafter in this barn. And there would be as many as 5 to 10 hung in a row. And they would be fully clothed, which is unusual because frequently they are all naked. The children, like this girl, were all given candles. And you can picture the ceremony as she described it. And the candles were lit one by one. Then the adults would go forward and they would pour from a cup some liquid on each of the children's clothing, which is obviously gasoline or kerosene. You didn't know that then. And then after whatever it was they had to do, they would give the signal, and these others would have to go forward and set the children on fire. When they were done, they would just cut them down. The first child that this girl had to kill was a cousin, a little cousin. What does that do to you? What does it do to your insides? But you couldn't object because the children that objected were killed. Frequently, she said, people would come. They'd come as families, like we would go to some big festive gathering, not knowing that their child would be sacrificed. And she would describe the screams of the parents when they realized that their child had been killed. And she talked about them being cut down and how they would draw a circle around the body. And when she first told me those things, I knew she was telling the truth. It wasn't that, but I didn't understand it. And I still can't tell you every answer, but I know that circles are important. And during these rituals, they will draw the circles, or in some way they will have a circle, because they believe that these demons that come can't break through the circle to harm them. She had also told about how the parents would kneel outside that circle where the child had fallen to pray to the child, is what she said. I've been told by people that know a lot more than I do that the reason for all of this death and murder is because of the belief in the demons and the power that they can get from that. And these people believe that the more innocent the victim, the more horrible the death, the closer you are at the moment of death, the more magic is released and the more spiritual power they get.